I'm Lori from Lori's Country Cottage, and this is How Tuesday. I'm going to show you how to create a pillowcase using a panel. Stay tuned. This is my panel. It's 45 inches wide, and I've got 23 inches of width here. One of our patterns that we have on our online for a free download that I will put the links in the video from call for 26 inches and one calls for 24. I find that 24 is big enough for my pillows, and this is 23. So rather than using the 12 inches that it suggests for my flap, I have cut it at 13 inches to give that little bit extra width. You want to take the selvage edges off your flap fabric as well as both edges of your panel. Straighten your edges so that you're working with a nice straight piece. And you want to make sure that your panel and your flap are the same size. So you want to measure the width, which is 45 inches, but each manufacturer has a little bit different width. So if you've got two different manufacturers, it may be two widths. So you want to make sure that the length of your flap is the same size as the length of your pillow panel. Then you want to lay your flap right side up on your work surface. Oops. And you want to put that long edge of your panel right along the top edge of your flap. Now I'm going to just pin this a little bit because I'm going to repin it once I've got it all set up. So I just pin it a little bit all the way to the end. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to roll up, set it nice and flat, roll this up till I get right to the top of the pinned area. Now what I want to do is pull the back of the flap up over here and meet the corner again, and I'll change that pin to go through all three layers. And I want to make sure that my folded edge doesn't get into this seam. So now I'll pin it all the way along, catching all three layers and not catching the folded piece of the panel. I've got another one here. This is all pinned all the way along. I'm going to take it to my sewing machine and I'm going to sew it along this edge with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'll take that to my machine and then I'll show you the next step. So I've taken this to my sewing machine and I sewed along here through all three layers with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. At the ends, I want a back stitch to hold it at both ends. Then I want to pull my panel out of here, and it will make your casing on the end all enclosed. Now this is the hot dog part of it, is that you roll that up like a hot dog, and now you've got your flap, and it's got a clean edge on both sides. So I took that to the ironing board, and I pressed it towards the flap on both sides. Make a nice crease in the top, and I'll show you the next step. Now I want to sew wrong sides together. Yes, wrong sides together. We're going to make a French seam where the French pillowcase pattern comes in. So what I want to do is I want to pin here. I want to make sure that this matches with this. Pin it there, pin the tip, and I'm going to want to start sewing, and I'm going to flip this over because I'm going to want to pin from this side. I want to start sewing at my flap, just so I've got the most accuracy right here where it's going to matter at the end and right here on the seam. So I want to make sure that is pinned right, and I want to sew it. I'm going to pin the two sides, and I'm going to sew them with a very scant 1/4 inch seam. That is wrong sides together. Okay, I'm going to finish pinning that. I'll take it to my machine and I'll show you the next step. Well, I've sewn all the way around the two raw edge sides with wrong sides together. So my seam allowance is on the right side. I want to flip that so that my right sides are together. And I'm going to take it to the iron and I'm going to press it open, or press it to one side. I guess you can't press it open. Yeah, you could. Press it to one side, and then I want to pin it, again, starting here, pin it all the way along and stitch on the two sides that I just sewed. I want to stitch with a good about 1/2 inch seam allowance to make sure that my 1/4 inch seam allowance that I've done the first time around is completely encased. So I've done this one already, and you can see that I've got my seam allowance, or my seam here. So all of this is inside. This is the inside of my pillow, all finished. Then when I turn it around, that seam is all encased in the pillowcase. So I'll take that to the iron and I'll bring it back and I'll show you the finished product. So here's the finished product, my pillow with the flap, and I've used a panel. So it doesn't matter which way I turn the pillow, my writing is going the right way. One thing that you may want to make note of is that I've done a set of pillowcases. And so when they're on the bed like this, I want them to both be going the right way. So I want the flaps to go out to the either ends. So you've got to make sure when you put your flap on, you put one on one end of the pillow and one on the other end of the pillow, or the other end of the panel, pardon me. So that is our pillowcase from a panel, and I thank you for watching. I'm Lori from Lori's Country Cottage.